Hello everyone. Um, Today I will be talking about my summer reading list as yesterday I was able to hand in my final assessment, which means I'm back and I'll be trying to upload a little bit more frequently. I should also say that I will be getting a mic soon, so um you won't have to kind of strain your ears when I mumble, which I think will be a bit better for everyone. Um, but yeah, I think this video would just be me talking about the kind of plans I have for the summer in terms of reading. Um, and I haven't really thought about the fiction through. I definitely have some non-fiction goals, but with the fiction, honestly, I just kind of sporadically chose some. It was also my birthday yesterday, so I received some books. Some I will be showing, some I will not be. Um, uh, just for future videos maybe. Well, I think we should start. First, I want to talk about the books that I'm reading currently. In the last couple weeks of my uni semester, I was, incredibly busy and kind of just uh, overloaded with work, and so I really couldn't read that much, which left me with this James Joyce's portrait of the artist as a young man being kind of put to the wayside, and I haven't read it in a couple weeks, and so I'm going to aim to finish that quite quickly, because I feel like I should have by now, but with all of the assessment that I was going through, I just couldn't really find the kind of energy to engage with Joyce as I would like. And so I think now that I have the time, I can actually kind of read it slowly and methodically as I wish. And yeah, it will be nice. I've really enjoyed it so far. I think I've talked about it at length in previous videos, but it's a really incredible piece. The next one is a book that I'm really quite enjoying, and it's a non-fiction book by this author Jhumpa Lahiri. I think I probably am really butchering that. It's called Translating Myself and Others, and my brother got me it. He when he was overseas, and he brought me it back, and it's a really interesting thing. It's a series of essays by this writer, and she is Bangladeshi, but she grew up in America, and then she kind of became super obsessed with Italy and with the Italian language, and so she eventually moved to Rome, and then she started not only kind of writing strictly Italian novels, but also she became a translator of various Italian fiction. And it kind of and these kind of series of essays, I've only read 3 out of 10 of them so far, but they kind of talk about translation in this very poetic sense, which I really like, because I do think that although I'm not particularly inclined to learn other languages, I've tried, I'm just kind of hopeless in that extent, but I do think that there is something to be said about how we kind of think and conceive and perceive things extremely differently in terms of the languages that we speak and use. And yeah, it's a very kind of reflective piece, and it's just really, really nice to read this one. There's a essay later on where she talks about Calvino, at least Calvino was in the title, so I'm quite excited to read about that. I just also really enjoy different writers talking about their processes and also the journeys that they've been on through their craft. Yeah, so really enjoying this one. So the other two fiction books that I will be trying to, at least thinking about, I honestly, these two I kind of just saw them on my bookshelf before this video, and I was like, yeah, they could fit. They could fit. The first one is one I think I've talked about already. It's The Unconsolved by Ishiguro. I've heard lots about this book. I've actually never read any of his other stuff, because he has many famous ones. Clara and the Sun is one I feel like I see on every single person's bookshelf, mine included, or it's in the house at least. And I hear that this one, The Unconsoled, is kind of unique in terms of his works, in the way that I think it is kind of meant to be a bit more of like a abstract stream of consciousness type of thing, which I've enjoyed in the past with people like Wolf. And so I was kind of I really was kind of thinking that I would enjoy it, basically. It also focuses, I'm pretty sure, on a person who plays piano, and I do really like especially fiction, but also like theoretical works who explain kind of broader ideas and interpretations through a kind of art form or a concrete device, such as piano or music. And I also just I like artists, I like art. So, as cliche as it is, I do like, having those as focuses, in stories. And the front cover of this hardcover is really great. Yeah. I don't really know much about this one. I'm just intrigued about it. Yeah, really intrigued about it. The next one I got for my birthday from my lovely friend, and it's gonna be my second go at Dostoevsky. And this is a short story from the Penguin Archive called The Dream of a Ridiculous Man. I talked about in an earlier video, I talked about how I had attempted to read The Brothers Karamazov a year or two ago, and I am technically still reading The Brothers Karamazov because I never finished it. I think that as someone who didn't grow up in a religious setting at all, the kind of philosophical conversations around God, but also even the church itself, and especially in a Russian Orthodox context, I wasn't really connecting with, even though I am quite interested in that, but it wasn't for me, and that length was not for me at the time. But Dostoevsky is not just those kind of conversations, right? His work is, wide ranging. And I think something like this is just perfect for me, right? It's nice and short. It's got the word dream in it, it seems pretty. The back says, "I'm a ridiculous man, they call me mad now." That would be a promotion in rank. So, I mean, that sounds pretty good to me, don't you think? Yeah. I think this would be good. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm very, very excited for this one, for sure. Okay, now we will kind of move the discussion to my theoretical blah, blah, blah aims for this summer. And I kind of am thinking now, I'm coming up on my last semester. I just finished a really, really important semester for me, where I kind of started to more anchor in on what I'm interested in. And my next semester, I'll be basically doing electives because I've finished my 2 majors. And then after that, I'll go on to postgraduate work. But so that means that I'm kind of coming up to an endpoint. And and through especially this semester, but earlier semesters as well, I kind of came to the conclusion that, and the acceptance, I guess I should say acceptance, that I am interested in theory. I'm very interested in theory. I love theory. I love creative philosophical works. So, and especially, and with lots of the theory that I'm interested in, especially the ones that focus on bodies and gender and um and kind of the subject, they are often either, critiquing, contrasting, or inspired by the kind of hermeneutics of suspicion. And I know that's kind of a weird term, but you'll know what I mean when I say the thinkers of that are Freud, Marx, Nietzsche, right? And so with all of those figures, I'm most knowledgeable about probably Marx, just because I've ran into many Marxist thinkers, Marxist people, Marxist text. I've read Marx before, uh, and so that's the one I'm probably most comfortable with in that kind of critical world, let's say. Um, and then probably after, honestly, maybe it's a tie with probably Nietzsche. I mean, I haven't read any Nietzsche before, but I mean, so many of the people who I have read, like um, Foucault and Butler, whether or not they directly reference it, even though sometimes they do, Nietzsche is kind of part of their philosophical backings. And then comes Freud, right? So Freud, the only time I ran into Freud has been very briefly in certain things, when I look at kind of look at different analytics, right? Like when I look at like Jacques Lacan, through Butler usually, or when I look at like people like Adorno in the Frankfurt School, in not more recent times, but more recent than Freud. But I basically, for this summer, want to kind of contextualize all these thinkers I'm interested in and the thinkers I want to be more knowledgeable about, which are people like Deleuze and Guattari, through kind of bolstering my canonical backings with Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud. And so we have some Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud. And I should preface that I'm kind of coming at this in a more of a playful kind of curiosity, right? I'm not really into canons and the whole idea of canons and these kind of great white men as the kind of canons and people you need to read in order to read other people. It's more about trying to contextualize the things I do want to think about. And fundamentally, lots of queer theory, lots of other theory, especially the ones I'm interested in, have been kind of in some way have a relation to these figures, and some not as well, though. Some not. I'm also getting more into kind of outside of the kind of Western world, and that might be a discussion for another video. But anyway. First, we have Freud's Civilization and its Discontents. Sorry. This is my mum's copy. I understand this to be quite a good place to start with Freud, because it kind of isn't, overtly. Because Freud isn't just a kind of, obviously, he's not just a, critique kind of oriented guy. He was a, borderline kind of a scientific like neuroscience, and obviously the father of psychotherapy and stuff. But this is more about a kind of psychoanalytical perspective on this kind of developing culture at the turn of the century, right? It's a kind of it's just kind of his thoughts on this kind of really important time, right? And that's kind of just what drew me to this book. Um, I'll do some other readings. I might read some of his essays and stuff, and I basically want to use Freud to kind of get me better at understanding Lacan, which will hopefully allow me to further get into Deleuze and look at eventually Anti-Oedipus, which is Deleuze and Guattari's one of their really important texts where they basically critique Marx and Freud Lacanian analytics. I'm getting very bad at pronunciations. Next, we have a book which I'm very excited to read. It's The Genealogy of Morals by Nietzsche. Genealogy is something that I've always been interested in, whether I kind of understand it or not. I mean, when people used to ask me, why do you like sociology? Why do you do sociology? I would answer, maybe I wouldn't answer this now, but I used to answer, because it makes the it makes the unobvious obvious and it makes the obvious unobvious, right? And genealogy is a way of that. Genealogy is this notion that things, have histories and things are not natural. And that kind of the social phenomenons that we see now and that we might see as neutral or objective are actually political and historical constructions, right? And they're specific to our present circumstances. This is all Foucault, right? But, and what predates Foucault is Nietzsche, right? This idea that there is no doer, there is only the deed. And that comes in this book, which is something I've worked very, very tirelessly with throughout my university career. So I think it's time that I actually read the text, right? The Genealogy of Morals. So he's going to be talking about morals, right? And how morals, and I'm assuming, right, how morals are not universal, but specific to our present circumstances and time. Yep. Sorry, everyone. We're back. I had some technical difficulties, and I just wanted to talk about my final book, which is the longest book here, the biggest book here, and the most famous book, probably, which is, of course, the iconic Karl Marx's Das Kapital, Volume 1, because, it's hard to find someone who's read Volume 1. It's even harder to find someone who's read the other volumes, right? But anyway, I think in the same kind of vein as Freud and Nietzsche, I was interested in, I've been kind of up close and personal with Marx through other people, right? As we all have, I assume. And, this book will obviously tell me about how workers will also inevitably claim the means of production and, kind of take out the bourgeois to kind of incite a revolution. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet, and we're still, holding on. But but I'm kind of joking around, but no, this is a very, very important text. I had a quick skim inside, and it says that Engels, who Marx wrote with throughout and wrote the Communist Manifesto with, Engels described this as the workers' Bible. I don't know, I think that kind of actually, I kind of sometimes feel that Marx is almost seen in this kind of very idealized theological manner, so I would maybe push back on that respectfully, but still a super important text. And any critiques of capital, especially this one, the very kind of the one that many other critiques of capitalism are kind of based on, I welcome with open arms. So, you know, I think that this will be very informative. The first 200 or so pages I've been told are very difficult, as they're largely kind of like real economics, numbers, all that jazz. So I'm a little apprehensive to those, and then the last sections I think will be a little bit more my speed, and they'll be talking about the kind of other impacts. I don't really know though. And yeah, this book is ginormous. And I'll tell you what, the words on these pages are not too big. So yeah. And I'll be reading this, thank God, in a book club. So I think I'll be more diligent, as you kind of, when you learn in a relational manner and there's egos involved. Speaking of Freud, we become more diligent, right? And yeah, so that is the last book on my summer reading list, a little casual one. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That was my summer reading books. As you can see, a kind of a summer of two different sides, where one is me kind of forcing myself to engage in some sort of structured canon, and the other is going to be hopefully some eclectic fictional fun, which in that way is not, unmeaningful. Those two sides are always going to be kind of as meaningful as each other, right? And with that, yeah, thanks for watching.